Welcome back, guys, to the 10-minute Bitcoin show. Gonna get you out of here before the next block. We are gonna have some meta conversations today. It's gonna be great. Now, let me get this out of the way first of all. You can see here that you've probably noticed one of the things about this show is that I share a lot of tweets of me talking to people that I have blocked. And if you're watching this show and I've blocked you on Twitter, I just want you to know that well, I was gonna say I want you to know that I don't hate you, but that might actually not be true. I think it would depend on who you are. But in most cases, the reasons that I block on Twitter is for myself. I do it to manage my time. It's a way, I spend enough time on X as it is. I don't need to argue with people that I think are acting in bad faith. And I always block shitcoiners. I always have, pretty much since I started using X way back when it was still known as Twitter, back in like 2017. But I'm dating myself here. Anyway, we're talking about it's nothing personal most of the time. Sometimes it's personal, but most of the time it's not. It's just a way to manage time, right? So pruning, there's this idea that I've seen floating that pruning somehow makes your full node less secure, or somehow means that you're skipping validation, or somehow means that you're killing, like this guy says, pruning cuts storage but kills verification. Let's talk about why this is completely false. So Bitcoin has what's called, when you first start up a Bitcoin node, it has an empty database with nothing in it. And it has to go through what's called IBD. That's India, Bravo, Delta. And IBD stands for Initial Block Download. And what it does is it connects you with other peers on the network. And those peers start serving you blocks from all the way back of the Genesis block created by Satoshi. And they give you blocks one at a time. They feed them to you. Well, I don't know how many it is at a time. They probably give it to you in more than that. But they feed you the blocks, and you start at the Genesis block. And you validate every single one sequentially all the way up until you've validated the full entire chain. Now, once you have done this full validation, starting from Genesis all the way up, you know that even if you don't keep every single one of those blocks, you have now verified that the entire blockchain is true from start to finish. And you no longer need all of those blocks. Like, you can store all those blocks if you want to be able to serve them to peers, or if you ever need to like connect a wallet that's existed for a long time. Pruning, you would need to reindex in that case. Or if you wanted like a Lightning wallet, there's reasons why you would want to maintain a full wallet. But pruning is an option when you want to reduce the amount of storage being used on your device, or maybe you don't have enough storage on your device to be able to store the full blockchain, but you have the option to store the full blockchain. You actually have to opt in to pruning. I'm not sure. I don't think it does it automatically if it detects. I'm not sure if it's sophisticated enough to like detect the amount of space you have and prune automatically if you start running out of memory. That would be a cool feature, but kind of difficult to implement. But anyway, because of the way that Bitcoin works, because it is a chain of blocks. In computer science, it's what we would call a linked list. The way that Bitcoin works is like, let's take the Genesis block, for example. The very next block after the Genesis block contains a hash of the previous block. And then the next block after that, block number 3, contains a hash of block number 2. Now, listen, I know there's probably plenty of people listening to this show that I've already lost. They're like, what the heck is a hash? I don't know about all these computer nerd things. We explained this yesterday. It's okay. You can go back and watch yesterday, but I'll run through it really quick. A hash is just a one-way function. It's like taking a piece of paper and running it through a shredder, and the output is the hash. It's one way, so you can't like run the paper back up through the shredder and get back the paper. You have now produced confetti from said paper. But every output of a hash is unique to the input. If you change one thing ever so slightly with the input, and then you hash something, you're going to get a completely different hash. So what that means is every single block that gets built on top of the previous block in the blockchain and contains a hash of the previous block before it, guarantees that once you've gone through this IBD, this full validation, full verification from Genesis all the way up to the end, that nothing in that history could ever change, because you would have a different hash at the end. Because Genesis block contains a hash, or Genesis block 1, block 2 contains a hash of the Genesis block 3 contains a hash of block 2. If the Genesis block were to change, the hash in block 3 would change, because the hash in block 3 contains a hash of block 2, right? And on down that list for hundreds of thousands of blocks, all the way up to the present day, right? So once you've done full validation, you can know with mathematical certainty that nothing has changed in the history of those blocks. So the statement that pruning kills verification is inherently false. It's FUD, guys. It's just simply not true. There's nothing wrong with pruning. Pruning is perfectly fine. Pruning might be inconvenient in situations where you now need that data, because then you have to just reindex. It's as simple as running reindex and turning off the pruning config in your bitcoin.conf file. Then you'll get all the data back or whatever. Or maybe not reindex. There's like 2 commands. You might have to actually redo IBD. I forget if reindex redoes IBD or if it just redoes chain state. Either way, there's a command, and you can look up the RPC command. That's all on the internet. There's documentation for these things if you're a wizard and you want to learn how to use command line. That's the best way to interact with your Bitcoin node, actually. And speaking of Bitcoin nodes, there's this narrative that the Knots people have, that Bitcoin Core people don't like. They want you to think that you shouldn't run a node. They want you to think that your node doesn't matter. It's a conspiracy, guys. The evil core people, they want you to think that your node doesn't matter, but it matters. This is we talked about this a few days ago, but we have to contextualize what a node is. A node is your own personal copy of the Bitcoin ledger. And having a personal copy of the Bitcoin ledger, having a copy of every transaction from the Genesis block all the way up until today, that's only useful if you're using it for Bitcoin. Just having a copy of that ledger sitting around your house, if you're not using it as a backend for your wallet, it's basically a window ornament, right? So the whole, it's very much a false premise that gets created by these people that nobody is saying that your node doesn't matter. Nobody has ever said that your node doesn't matter. Your node doesn't matter if you're not using it. And then enter the term economic node. What does it mean to be an economic node? Well, it means that the node is getting used as a backend for a wallet that has Bitcoin in it. Economic activity, right? It's pretty simple. What it should be obvious what we mean when we say economic node. Your node is your wallet backend. It's your copy of the Bitcoin ledger. It tells you what's true in the Bitcoin network. You plug that into your wallet. If you got Bitcoin in your wallet, congratulations, your node is an economic node and it matters. But this idea that you can spin up nodes on web servers or buy one of these like Raspberry Pi trinket talismans from these companies that mail them to your house preloaded with God knows what. This idea that like your node matters no matter what, and that it somehow protects the network or upholds superstitious rights. These things are useful for people selling trinkets, right? You need to contextualize. You need to realize that people who influence in Bitcoin, people who have made names for themselves in Bitcoin, they have a vested interest at protecting certain narratives. And if I were a guy selling expensive trinkets, it would be in my best interest, my best personal financial interest, maybe not in my moral, ethical interest. It would be in my personal financial best interest to spread the narratives that it's really useful to just run a node. And in fact, if you really want to help the network, buy 2, buy 3, buy 4, buy 5. Dump all the pennies you have, young pleb, into helping secure the network. Please buy more of my trinkets and plug them into your wall. They don't do anything, guys. If they're uneconomic, they don't do anything. You cannot Sybil attack Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a Sybil resistant distributed ledger, and it's great.